Hi there, welcome to Subpar Stitches. My name is Hillary and this is my Flosstube channel. So I feel like when I came to you guys 2 weeks ago, I had whip after whip after whip. Like I had a lot of projects that I had worked on, which just in the past few months has been typical of me. In a 2 week span, I work on a lot of different projects. I like to touch a lot of different projects and do a lot of different things, but in these past 2 weeks I actually don't have as many projects, not as much progress, because I had a friend come in from out of town. So 1 week I was preparing for her to come from out of town. She lives in California and I live in Michigan, for those of you who don't know. And so I was kind of prepping my apartment and things like that. And then the following week she was here, and so I wasn't going to be like, I'm cross-stitching, we can't hang. Like she's not a cross-stitcher, so I didn't want to be like, I have to cross-stitch this much a day. And so I didn't get as much done these past couple of weeks as, not necessarily that I would have liked, but just that is typical of me. However, we did have a ton of fun. I showed her around. She's from LA, and I showed her around the kind of Detroit metro area, I guess. I took her to Frankenmuth, which is Michigan's little Bavaria, for those who don't know. It's like a fake little German town in Michigan. I took her to the Renaissance Festival because I have to go to that. And we did a lot of like more nail polish themed stuff because if you guys don't know, I actually started out on YouTube 3 years ago as a nail polish channel. I'm Mediocre Manny's. This is like my new venture into YouTube, I guess, as Subpar Stitches, but I still post over there. And so we did a lot of like nail polish themed activities, and that was kind of my main focus for the past couple of weeks. However, we watched some movies and I did a little stitching then, and before and after, you know, she came and left, I did some stitching as well. So all that being said, you know, I don't have any finished objects, no FFOs, anything like that. I just didn't have time. I did have actually one sewing FFO. I don't know if you guys care to see that, so I'm gonna show it because this is my channel. I guess I can do what I want. But a friend of mine, two friends of mine, they're married. For some reason I'm like a friend, but like they're like a unit in my head. They had a baby a year ago, and that baby, since it's been 1 year, has turned 1 year old. And so I wanted to try my hand because I'm trying to learn how to sew. I wanted to try my hand at making him a stuffed toy, and I made a sock monkey, and it's the first time I ever made anything like this. So I definitely didn't feel super self-confident about it, but I sent pictures to some friends and everyone was like, that's really cool, you did a great job. And like, listen, I didn't do a great job. Some of the attaching of the limbs and especially the ears, it left a lot to be desired, but this is the first time I did it and I learned a lot, and I still felt like I can still give this as a gift. He's one, like he doesn't care. I brought it to his party. They had a like Hobbit, like Bilbo's birthday themed party for him in their backyard. It was super cute. They all like, they dressed up and they dressed him up like a hobbit. It was precious. And I gave him the sock monkey, and apparently he won't, the 1 year old child, not, I don't know if I established who he is. My friend's baby, he like won't put it down. He's like dragging it all over the place. He had to get some shots recently and he took it with him. I don't know. I was very happy about that. So if you were wondering, here's the sock monkey. It looks a little scary. I know that. But he likes it, so that's fine. I hope he grows up to be a weird kid. But anyways, let's get into the cross stitching. So I only have 3 whips. However, one of those whips has a ton of progress because I was mostly monogamous on that one. But let's just kind of go chronologically. So my first whip, I'm sure you guys, if you have watched any of my past episodes, will kind of expect. It is my wizard, so I'm behind. I have fallen behind. And that's just because I had a friend coming over, and I just didn't have time to stitch on it. So 2 weeks ago, the new motifs dropped, and there were 2 motifs. So there were this little cup here. You can see like it's like got like the Fountain of Youth water, I believe, was kind of like the meta with that. And then directly next to it, right here, is supposed to be a skull, and that's what I'm going to stitch next. It's only got a few colors. I got them all pulled and in my Barney craft bag. Here is what it looks like so far. However, there are several more motifs. So like I said, it was like this, and then a skull should be right next to it. Then 2 more motifs dropped. It's like a clover, and I can't remember what the other one was. And then today is Friday, so they just released 2 more motifs. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 behind basically. But they're small, so I'm like 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks behind. But they're over here. It'll be a sword, and then they looked like kind of like D&D dice. And so this weekend I'm hoping to get a good chunk of that done, but I'll talk more about that in plans. But this is the Sewing Starfish Wizard Inventory Stitch Along. This is my first ever stitch along, and I love it. And there will be 1 week where there's a break, so if I am still behind by that point, I'll use that juncture to catch up. I am stitching this on 18 count black Aida, and it's like from, oh, is it like RTO or something like, it's just some cheap black Aida that I got. But I definitely love this. I definitely want to stitch more from Sewing Starfish, and I definitely want to join more stitch alongs. And so this has just solidified that I know that I love stitching like on a time. Like I love when they're like, here's your schedule, stick to it. It's so easy for me. I love a schedule. So, but yeah, so far, my favorite motif that I have stitched thus far, I think, is probably the unicorn, just because I really liked stitching the rainbow. But my favorite part of this is probably still, and maybe forever always will be, the little spider hanging off his hat here, the little webbing there. I do need to go through, and the gecko here on his sleeve needs French knots for eyes. And then this guy too also needs some eyeball French knots, but I'm waiting till the end to do the French knots because I don't know how flat French knots lay, and I iron this pretty frequent. I haven't ironed it recently, but I iron it pretty frequently. Like whenever I'm done stitching for the week, I iron it so I can, you know, take pictures and show it to you guys, and it's not like, you know, crinkled up in a mess. And I don't want to ruin the French knots from like ironing over and over. So I don't know. I also don't know how to do a French knot, so I need to practice before I do it. So that is the Wizard Inventory Sal. And like I said, not tonight, but this weekend for sure, I will be stitching more on this. Okay, the second thing I stitched on was actually a new start, and this is the Quacker sampler, and I forgot the pattern artist's name. I bought this on Etsy, so I will, when I'm editing, I'll pop the name of the seller on the screen, but this is a Quaker style like sampler, but it's all ducks, hence Quacker sampler. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to stitch that. So I did end up, I had bought everything for it. It uses a specialty like fancy floss. In fact, it uses quite a lot of, it just uses one, so that's kind of nice, but it is the Simply Shaker Gentle Arts Country. These have a long name. It says Simply Shaker Sampler Threads, the Gentle Art Counted Thread Embroidery. It's got a lot. There's a lot going on. But it's like you use about 12 skeins of it. This is linen. It is a lightly variegated, like kind of raw looking color. And it just works really well for this duck sampler, this Quacker sampler. I'm stitching, you know, I'm using the called for fabric. I'm using the called for threads. However, I need your help. I need to talk to you guys about this because I got 500 stitches in. Look at this. It's so hard for me to look at that and believe that that's 500 stitches. And yet it's 500 stitches. So I got, well, technically it's 477 stitches, but it's 500 stitches, whatever. I got 500 stitches in, and then I realized that the called for way to stitch this is 2/2, and I'm stitching 1/2, and this fabric is 32 count blue spruce Belfast linen from Zweigart. So I'm stitching essentially one strand on 16 count when you really think about it, because it's over 2. And I guess I've never heard of anybody really doing that, but I'm also really new to stitching 1 versus 2 strand and like some of these higher count fabrics and stuff like that, like 32 count. I used to only stitch on Aida, and I would always stitch 2/1 on 14, 16, or 18 count Aida. And it didn't matter what the count was, I always stitched 2/1. I always did a loop start, and that's how I stitched. And it's only in the past couple months that I have stitched 1/2, that I've stitched on linen, that I've stitched on even weave. And so I guess I wasn't really thinking. And now I'm worried. Does it look weird? I think it looks cute. I think the stitches doing it 1/2 looks really petite and like tiny, but I can see the variegation myself. It is an incredibly light variegation. I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera. I think the issue is like, it's kind of like this particular colorway of floss looks a little bit yellowed, and that's like the way it's supposed to look in some areas, and then it looks a little bit whiter in others, kind of like a dirty little ducky boy, you know? And so I think I'm happy with it. But as soon as I realized what I had done, I stopped, and I was like, do I rip out all 477 stitches and start over 2/2? Or do I just go 1/2 like I have been, because I've been enjoying stitching 1/2 on 16. I think it looks cute. But again, I mean, it looks a little bit sparse, but not in a way that I think is bad. You get it's like kind of a rustic sampler look. And I'm like, am I just trying to cope? Am I just trying to convince myself that I like it? Or does it actually look cool and fun and cute and silly? I don't know. Have you guys ever stitched 1 strand on 16 count or 1/2 on 32 count? Like, is that a thing people do? Because I feel like people stitch 1 thread on 18 count and above, or 36 count and above, and I've never heard anybody talk about stitching 1 strand on anything like lower than that. And so I'm nervous, and it's like, what are the cross stitch police gonna come to my house? I don't know. I guess, like, why am I so worried about this? Because it's like, if I like it the way it looks, and I do. I'm like looking at the viewfinder, and I'm like, I like that. Yeah, I like that. So why am I so worked up about it? I don't know. So if anybody watching this video has any experience with stitching one thread or 1 strand on 16 or 32 count, respectively, doesn't matter. I mean, it's the same thing. But if you have any experience with that and like a finished product, or you can point me to an Instagram post with that kind of a look, I would be so appreciative. Or if you could just tell me, like, do you think it's gonna look bad? Do you think it's gonna look fine? This is like the first motif here outlined, and then these are like reeds that are coming off of it, like in a pond, you know, with the forbidden corn dog thing. I don't remember what those are called, but they look like a corn dog. And then I think I can't even remember, because after I put it down, I was like, oh, I don't want to think about it. I'll ask in my next Flosstube. So if you guys have any input, whether it's positive or negative, whether you think this looks good or bad, I would actually love for you to tell me, because I'm so blinded by the fact that I already did 500 stitches and I don't want to pull it all out if I don't have to. Let me see. How many stitches is this overall? I have it in Pattern Keeper. You know, it's 15,755 stitches. So I've literally only done 3.03% of this. However, I'm happy with it, I think. But let me know. Let me know what you think. Like, here, let me give you one final close up so you guys can see, like, super close. This is what the itty bitty babby little stitches look like. So should I pull it out and restart, or are we good? Let me know. So that was the second thing I stitched on, and then the third thing I stitched on, and the final thing, which I've been stitching on a ton because it has a deadline, is a gift for my brother's girlfriend for her birthday, which I thought our birthday was October 22nd for some reason. Guess what? It's October 2nd. So I was almost right. I just put too many twos in there. So this stitch is called Yummy Bakery, and it is, I believe it's by Stitch Sprout, but I'll double check because I'm bad at remembering everything. But here's where I was the last time you guys saw it. And this is where I am now, which, as you can see, I have made pretty significant progress. Last time, I think I said I was going to finish like the outline of the bakery, and then I was going to do all the little motifs, because basically this looks like it's like a big bakery, and then there's all these like little baked goods here and in the window, and then on this side is all like baking tools, like there's like measuring cups and like a mixer and things like that. But then I got sick of only stitching like these pinks and reds, and I was like, I'm losing steam. So then I decided, let me just color complete from the least amount of stitches to the most amount of stitches colored. And so I did that for a while, and there are 20, maybe 21 or 22, I think 21 colors. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors remaining to stitch. So I have stitched in total 5,390 stitches on this. I have 1,722 to go. So I'm 25% away from being done with this. And then I can go find a frame and just frame it. And then next weekend is my father's retirement party, because today, Friday the 29th, was his final day of work for the rest of his life, except I'm pretty sure he already found a part-time job because he's weird. So my mom is throwing a really big retirement party for him. And so I will see my brother next weekend, and I'll give it to him then. So that kind of buys me a little extra time. However, I would like to have this finished by the end of September. I'm filming this on September 29th. And so tonight I would like to try to put in several hundred stitches on this. And then tomorrow, Saturday the 30th, which is when this video will be posting, so today for you guys, I will finish stitching it in theory. And then I will iron it. And then maybe, depending on when I finish it, maybe I'll go to Michael's or Joann's or something like that and find a frame to put this dang thing in, and it'll be done. And then I am going to, because I actually enjoyed focusing on a few projects, like focusing on a finish, you know, I did enjoy it. It did feel like I could see more progress with this. So I guess that kind of leads me into plans. And then I have just an itty bit of haul. Okay, so my plans are, I'm very excited for, because I think what I'm gonna do, I felt inspired by like how much progress I made on the bakery piece, that I've decided that for October, I'm going to really focus only on, I'm only gonna stitch, I mean, I say I am only gonna stitch on, but if I change my mind, I change my mind. That's fine. It's a hobby. I can do what I want. But I really want to focus on my fall, spooky, and Halloween type stitches. And I think I don't really have anything fall specific, but I do have weirdo spooky stuff, and I definitely have some Halloween stuff. So I have a project, you know, my project calendar, and I've dedicated several days to each of my individual spooky / monster type projects. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to finish my pet spider magnet from Mill Hill. It's like a Mill Hill kit. I feel like I've got like 2 days of minor stitching on that, and I can finish it. It's like, and I don't know how long beading takes, to be quite honest with you. So maybe I'm underestimating, but it's so itty bitty. I really don't think it'll be too much of a problem. So I dedicated like 2 or 3 days to that. And then I also want to finish my Frimp, because I have only 1,393 stitches left on that, which, you know, for me on an average day, like an average normal, like not a weekend day, I can do at a minimum a little over 100 stitches if I only stitch on my lunch hour. And then if I stitch on my lunch hour and after work, I can get 2 to like 500 stitches depending on what I have to do. So the frimp really shouldn't take me that much longer to finish, and I might even be able to FFO that in October as well. My goal is to not only like get as much progress done as I can on some of these like spookier projects, but to finish as many as I can, because I want to make room. Not that I have like a set number of whips that I'm like allowed to have, but it's like they've been in the works for a while, and I would love to finish as many as I can so that I can kind of bring in the new wave of new starts. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. So once I finish the frimp, because I've got 3 days dedicated to that, and I think that's more than enough, I am going to start working on my anti-social cryptid club. Now, I don't know percentage-wise what I have left on that because I'm working off of paper, but I feel like it's a rather small pattern, so it shouldn't take me too long. Now that one, though, I'm not sure if I can work on my lunch, because I've only worked on that at home under a nice bright, like I think it's, what is it, an OT light? Really nice light. I don't need magnification yet. You know, I just turned 31. We'll probably get there at some point, but I don't need magnification yet. This is on 40 count fabric. So this is the smallest, like, do you call it a small count or a high count? I don't know. Like, they're the smallest stitches I've ever done, but is 40 count, we call it high count, right? Like, I don't remember. Like, I just say things and then don't think about it. So this is the ittiest bittiest little stitches I've ever done. And it is nice to just have that really bright light, because I am using murky, which, just going by the name, you kind of know it's a murky fabric. So I don't know if there's anywhere in my office that I could stitch that on my lunch that would provide enough light for that. However, I think that I can finish it. I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3. It looks like I dedicated 3 days. Yes, I have planned this out this far in advance. I've dedicated 3 days to Antisocial Cryptid Club, but 3 of those days, or 2 of the 3 days, are weekend days, which are like, you know, the days that I can do the most. And then every single Friday is dedicated to the Wizard, because that's when the new patterns drop. I also want to work on my Enchanted Forest number, I think I'm on number 2, right? Because I did number 1, that one's finished. And then there's 3 of the patterns in the series. So I started number 2, but I got such a weak start, and I would like to finish 2 and 3 because I found a frame for them. It's like a triptych frame where it like opens, you know, it's like 3 pieces and it kind of stands itself up. I'm not doing a good job explaining it, but it's a triptych frame. And that's what I want to put them in, and I would like to maybe finish those. I don't know if this month is feasible, but by November, right? Maybe? By the end of November. So I'll put some work into Enchanted Forest 2, which I think is the smallest one of the bunch. Like, there's like, what they are is like, they're like a cloche, and then they have like some like greenery and stuff, or crystals in a couple of them, and then these little ghosts, which I've replaced the ghost thread with the glow-in-the-dark DMC. I just thought it would be really fun. And so the first one was like the medium-sized cloche. The second one, I believe, is like the squat itty-bitty one. And then I think the third one is like the really tall one. So the third one will take the longest. But even then, I think they're on 14 count, so they're not, and they're pretty big, so they stitch up pretty fast. Like, they're not big stitch-wise, like they don't have a huge stitch count, but like the stitches themselves are big. So I find that stitching on like 14 count is like easier, you know? I also have a few days dedicated to Nostalgic Ouija, which I don't think I'll finish this one in the month. I just don't have as much progress, and it's a fairly decent sized pattern, so I just wanted each of it done as I could. But again, I've got 3 days dedicated to it, and 2 of those days are weekend days, so I can definitely push out a lot of it. I do want to also stitch the planchette, that's so American. The planchette, I don't know. The thing you move on the Ouija board. I want to stitch that too. I have plastic canvas for that, but I don't have plans to start that this month. I just at least want to finish the board itself. Then I get to do some new starts, which I'm excited about. So I bought Assembly Required, and I bought the required thread, and I have some hand-dyed fabric that I'm like, I can just use this, and it seems like it'll stitch up fast. It seems fairly small. I think it's an ink circles design, which the more I see of ink circles, the more I'm like, yeah, I definitely really like this. Like, their pattern styles are really fun. And I've got 4 days dedicated to it. I might be able to just finish it in those 4 days because it's just a bunch of little bones of a skeleton, and it uses one of the variegated threads from DMC, which I've never had a pattern call for that, so I was excited about that. And then the other new start that I wanted to do, it's one called Stitch Witch Froggers, which it came from the Halloween, like Just Cross Stitch, right? Just Cross Stitch magazine with all the like ornaments and stuff like that. I looked at the Christmas ornament one and I just didn't, none of them really vibed with me, but the Halloween one I loved, so I did pick that up. And it says like Stitch Witch Froggers on it, and I'll have to take a picture of the pattern and put it up because I don't remember everything, but I just thought it was a really cute little like pillow type ornament I could make. And then I'd probably just hang it somewhere in my cross stitch space and keep it up year round, because Halloween is not the only time you can put that kind of stuff up. You can just have it up all the time. And then I just have like working on the Enchanted Forest for the rest of the month. If I finish everything before the month ends, then I'll either stitch on something I've already got going, or I'll start something else new because I have stuff kitted up, ready to go. It just depends on what my mood is. So we'll see about that. But those are my plans for the rest of the month, or rather for the entire month of October. And then I have just a little bit of haul for you. Well, it's for me, but I'll show you. Like, I talked about this before. I had placed a Bestitch Me order in either August or the very beginning of September. I can't remember. Probably the beginning of September. And I mean, I knew it would take a little bit because the turnaround time for the hand-dyed fabric is a little bit lengthier, you know, because I think it's made to order. But I ordered a fabric and I ordered some silk, hand-dyed silks. So I did show these before, but like they were like the website pictures. So I did get a 10-yard skein of Haunted. This one reminds me of Goosebumps. It's just like green and purple, and it's just like those beautiful Goosebumpsy colors. And so I figured I could, you know, sub this in on any kind of Halloween pattern, maybe for some text or something like that. In a similar vein, I got this one called Trick or Treat. Again, very Halloween, although this one is like vintage Halloween. So it's got those like softer, paler orange, green, purple. And again, I feel like I could sub this in for some like font or some border or something on a cool little Halloween pattern. And, you know, these are only 10 yards, so it's not like I can go crazy wild with them. I can't put them on a sampler or something. Or maybe I could. Maybe I could replace like a single motif with one of these. That would be fun. Maybe I'll do that too. We'll see. I picked up 10 yards of this one called All the Colors. And it is, I mean, the name is on the box. It's all the colors. It's just a big pile of rainbow. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Maybe in Pride Month, I'll start like a pride stitch and again, like a border or like a motif or something. I'm not sure. I was like, that looks gay as hell and I want it. So I got that one. And then I got 2 skeins of this one because I didn't know how much I was going to need. And this one is called Cosmos. And this is even more beautiful in person. It's really interesting. So like I bought these at the same time. I'm assuming they're the same dye lot, but it's like interesting to see like the variegation on one of like on the one right here. It looks like it has a lot more blue. And then this one looks a little bit more like, you know, like not normal, but like evenly spread out. I have no issue with that. You know, the whole reason I want these variegated flosses is because I like the variation on them. And I can't remember if I said, but this one is called Cosmos. And I bought these with intention to stitch on, oh my gosh, what's it called? It's called Tiny Blackwork. Is it 2? It says like welcome friends, and it's this like little black, like all black stitched piece. It's very small. And I got a 40 count optical white linen for it, it's called. And it's just going to be this itty bitty little sign that I want to put towards my front entryway. But I just didn't want to just do black. And so I thought, let's get something fun. Let's get something crazy. But I wanted something that was on the darker side, you know, as opposed to like this where the colors are more pastel kind of rainbow. I wanted something that is really like punchy and will just be like really legible, because sometimes when you stitch letters with a lighter color, it's harder to read. So I wanted something that was darker, and that's why I got that one. And then I ordered a fat quarter of hand-dyed fabric. So this is blush, and it is a fat quarter. Like I said, it's Lugana, and it is a 32 count. Now I got this again with intention. I picked up the Lovebug sampler, and I did end up picking up the called for fabric as well. It's called Sprite, and it is a very, very light, like lavender. And I looked at it and I was just like, I love the finished piece. I love the like the display piece that they show on their sales listing. And so I was like, I want that look. But just looking at Sprite online, that colorway, it's very light. And Lovebug Sampler is also incorporating a lot of very light colors, like white and really light pinks. And I was worried they're going to get like lost in the sauce of the fabric. And so I did order that, you know, that one, but then I picked up this as well. And I feel like this is reading pretty true on camera. It's just a darker pink, and it's still a light pink. That's the thing. It's just darker than Sprite is. And so I'm hoping, I'm going to do a floss toss on both of them eventually. I don't plan on starting Lovebugs immediately, maybe in November, depending on how much I get done. But I just wanted an option to kind of toss between, and then whichever one I don't use, I'll definitely use for something else, because Sprite is a beautiful color. It is a really like neutral tone, and this just, you know, it's despite the modeling, it's because this is very modeled, but it's not so in your face that it couldn't be used with a lot of stuff. I could see a fancy lady being stitched on this. I don't stitch fancy ladies, but I could see somebody doing that on something like this. I love ladies. I don't want to stitch a fancy one. I don't know what it is. Like, actually, there is one Mirabilia that I kind of have my eye on, maybe. And I think it's Florence Nightingale, and the only reason is because her dress looks like it looks like the plates that I used to eat off of growing up as a kid. So I don't know if that's a good enough reason to stitch that fancy lady, but I don't know. We'll see how this goes. So that's kind of it for stitching. Like I said, there wasn't much. I did kind of want to talk about books a little bit. I know that like a lot of Flosstubers talk about books, and I also read a book here and there. So I thought, like, not all the time will I do this, but I did want to throw in some like book talk at the end, I guess. So if you're only here for the stitching, that's totally fine. I get it. Like, you can, no one's stopping you from Xing out. You're allowed to. But if you want to talk about books a little bit, I just have a couple things that I wanted to chat about. So let's just talk about those, I guess. I recently, I was going through a reading slump for like 3 months, and then I got an email from my library. They were like, Hillary, your library card's about to expire. And I was like, excuse me? They do that? Because when I was growing up in my hometown, our library cards didn't expire. I don't know if like they just auto-renewed or what, but I never had to renew my library card as far as I can remember. But I'm from like a podunk village, so that could be part of it. And then when I was in college, my student ID was my library card, so I didn't really have to do anything with that either. And then I moved out of the country, and I was like, you know, I don't know where the library was in like location to me where I lived. So I just never went to the library when I lived in Japan. I just didn't do that. And then I bought a lot of used books in Japan, though, because used books are so cheap. And actually, regular books are pretty cheap in Japan, too. And then when I moved back to my college town. I still had my student ID, so I was checking out books still there. And then I moved out to where I'm living now, which is like in the Metro Detroit area. And that's when I finally was, well, I guess I have to get a library card again. So I got a library card like 3 years ago. and it expired after 3 years. And so we've since moved away from that branch, and so I had to go to a different branch, and the library is so much smaller. It's really sad. And but they do the interlibrary loan stuff. So all that to say, I got an email from my library, and I went to a different library and I got a library card. And while I was there, I was looking around, and they had a pretty decent graphic novel section. I love graphic novels. And so I picked up the first book of Heartstopper, which I've heard a lot about, and I've heard like so many people being like, it's so controversial, we need to ban it. And I would love to know why. I always love to know, why is a book controversial and why are they banning it? And so I read it and I was like, oh, this is cute as hell. I love this. And so I immediately put the next 3 on hold, and I read through all those, and like you can read one so fast. They're young adult, first of all. So it's like they're not for someone who's 31. So they're easy to read really quickly for me, but also they're a graphic novel. So it's like, it's mostly it's a lot of pictures. It is pictures. It's graphic. And I read the first 4, and I didn't find it controversial at all. Like, I felt like all the topics were in line with the age group that it's targeting. And I also felt like they were good topics to talk about. It talks about coming out, not just as gay, but as bisexual. It has a trans character. It has older gay adults as well. And it talks about, not super in depth, I guess, but a little bit, talks about being bullied for coming out in high school, which is a really difficult thing. It's something that happened to me when I was in high school. I was one of the first out kids in my high school in my age range, and I took a lot of shit for that. And I would say it probably still does affect me to this day. But I liked it. I did feel, it's written by a woman, and it's about 2 young gay men. So I do wonder, like, from a gay man's perspective, like, how would he feel about it? But it wasn't like, I heard some people think it's too provocative, it's too raunchy, like kids shouldn't be reading about gay stuff, which is like, bro, come on. And then I also heard the flip side, where people are like, there's no sex in this, there needs to be sex. And they're 15-year-old boys. Like, we don't need to put sex in a novel for it to be like, not every romance novel has to be sexual, it's just a really sweet, like, heartfelt book. And they touch on eating disorders a little bit as well. And, one of the boys, he kind of has, I think they did describe it as PTSD in the book, PTSD from the bullying he received from coming out in an all-boys school. And it led to anorexia and things of that nature. And so they do talk about it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's not like triggering at all, because it might be a little bit, but I do think that the way they handle it, the way they discuss it was really well done. So I have really enjoyed those. I don't know if the 5th one is out or it's about to come out. And so I'm looking forward to reading that and just seeing how it all culminates in the end, because it's just cute and the art style is very cute. I love that art style. And that's the main thing that I have read. Like I said, I'm just kind of getting back in the swing of things. But the types of books that I do like to read, it varies a great deal. The only thing that I typically don't read is fantasy. I'm just not a big fantasy person, which unfortunately it seems like most Flosstubers are huge not unfortunately, but like, I can't relate to them, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, because a lot of the Flosstubers here seem to really love fantasy, specifically ACOTAR and things of that nature. So I did pick up the first one and I did read it, and I didn't enjoy it, but I also didn't hate it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it was like, I see why people like these books, but I just don't like fantasy. However, I did pick up the second one at the library, because now that I've read the first one, I gotta finish them all. Like, I don't know what it is. So it's sitting on my couch out in my living room. I'm gonna read the second one. And I also picked up Radium Girls, which is about like the women during the war who were painting like the watch faces on the watches, and they were, in between to fine up the tip of the brush, licking the brush to make it fine and then re-dipping it in the paint and painting the watch face. Now the paint was, I believe, glow in the dark, or like it glowed in the dark, and that was due to the radium. And radium is poisonous, and these women, unfortunately, were devastatingly affected by this. This is like a true, like, I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but this one really intrigued me. My boyfriend's like, all you read is sad shit. Like, stop. He's like, you just have like the saddest, worst taste in books. And I was like, yeah, I want to cry. Like, I just want to be sad all the time. So I want to start that one too. It's a pretty heavy, it's got like 400 and something pages. And like, for me with a nonfiction book, that's pretty heavy for me. Like, that's a lot. But I'm looking forward to reading that. I think it'll be an interesting, like, historical read. And then I have a half-read book that I just has been in my purse. And it's not half-read because it's bad. It's just half-read because I started cross-stitching on my lunch instead of reading. And so I need to finish that. It's called No No Boy. I do read a great deal of diaspora-type novels. I really do like, either based on true events or like just from the author's own experience, or reflecting on tales from their parents, that type of stuff. Specifically, I read a lot of Asian diaspora, or even just books set in mostly Japan and Korea. I really like that kind of stuff because for me, my major in college was Japanese, and I studied the culture and the language, and I lived there, and I work pretty much exclusively in like a Japanese space. And my long-term partner of 10 years is Korean, and he was born there, but he came here very shortly after birth. And he's probably what many would call either a 0.5 or first generation. And just hearing his experiences, it's difficult sometimes, but it's very interesting and it's enlightening. And to read other people's experiences who have similar or even very different experiences, despite having like the same background as him, I don't know, I find it quite interesting to read and just gather a little bit more understanding on like the things that people are going through. So if you have any recommendations in those veins, would love to know. But yeah, that's kind of where I guess I will leave it, and I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. Hopefully I will have some spooky haunted Halloween finishes for you, but yeah, that is going to be it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.